The moment you decide to transform your life often begins long before you take your first step. It starts as a quiet awareness, a subtle whisper reminding you that you're capable of more. Over time, that whisper becomes a persistent echo, urging you to face a truth you can no longer ignore. You've outgrown who you've been, and a new version of you is waiting to emerge. This realization isn't born from dissatisfaction alone, but from the deep human desire to evolve, to expand, and to align more closely with your true potential. There is something powerful about acknowledging this internal shift. It marks the point where you stop moving through life on autopilot and start becoming conscious of your direction. When you recognize that you're standing at the edge of a personal turning point, everything feels more vivid. Your hopes, your frustrations, your ambitions. It's as if life is holding up a mirror, not to show you your flaws, but to reveal the possibilities that have always been within reach but rarely embraced. In these moments, you begin to understand that transformation is not an accident. It is not a random stroke of luck or a sudden moment of inspiration that happens by chance. Transformation is a choice, one that only you can make. You choose to rise above the comfort of familiarity. You choose to challenge the narrative of what you thought you could or couldn't do. You choose to rewrite your story one deliberate decision at a time. This defining moment carries a sense of urgency, but not the frantic urgency of panic. Instead, it's the urgency of awakening. You start to feel that every day spent waiting is a day you could have spent building. Every hour spent hesitating is an hour you could have invested in becoming someone stronger. And every excuse, no matter how logical it seems, becomes a barrier between you and the life you envision. What makes this moment so significant is that it marks the intersection between potential and intentionality. Potential without action is a dream. Action without purpose is motion. But when potential and intention meet, they spark the beginning of meaningful change. This understanding shifts your mindset from passive hope to active creation. You begin to see your limitations differently. Instead of treating them as walls, you see them as starting points, places where growth can begin. The fears that once kept you still become opportunities to build courage. The doubts that once clouded your vision become reminders that clarity is a skill you cultivate. The obstacles you once avoided become steps in the staircase leading upward. In this defining moment, your internal language begins to shift. Someday becomes now, maybe becomes I will, I can't, begins to fade into I'm learning. This subtle shift in language changes the energy behind your actions. It gives you permission to take yourself seriously, to believe that you are worth the effort required to rise, and to accept that your goals deserve your commitment. You start to recognize that transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about stripping away the layers of doubt, distraction, and hesitation that kept you from being who you truly are. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that has always been waiting, ready to take the lead once you decide to stop holding back. As you stand in that moment, you also realize that clarity doesn't mean you know exactly what the next 6 months will look like. Clarity means you understand that staying where you are is no longer an option. It means that your desire for growth outweighs your fear of change. It means that even though the path ahead may be unfamiliar, remaining stagnant feels far more uncomfortable. This is the defining moment where transformation becomes inevitable, not because life demands it, but because you have chosen it. It is the moment where your future stops being a distant hope and starts becoming an intentional creation. It is the beginning of a journey that will challenge you, reshape you, and reveal strengths you didn't know you possessed. Clarity begins as a quiet search for understanding, a desire to connect your actions with something deeper than routine or obligation. It's the process of asking yourself why certain goals matter and why certain paths feel more meaningful than others. When you take the time to ask these questions honestly, without filtering them through expectations or fear, you start to uncover the real motivations that drive you. This internal exploration is not always comfortable, but it is essential, because without clarity, even the most admirable goals can feel directionless. As you begin to define your purpose, the fog that once surrounded your decisions starts to lift. You no longer feel pulled in a dozen directions, because clarity has a way of simplifying your priorities. Instead of trying to be everything at once, you become intentional about what you pursue. You start to see which goals are rooted in meaning and which exist only because you felt you were supposed to want them. This shift is powerful. It allows you to invest your energy where it truly counts. Clarity also shapes your resilience. When you know why you are pursuing something, the obstacles along the way lose their ability to stop you. Challenges no longer feel like signs to quit. They feel like tests that reinforce your commitment. Purpose strengthens your endurance because it reminds you that the work you're doing is connected to something that matters deeply. You're not just pushing through difficulty, you're advancing toward a vision that aligns with who you want to become. With clarity, your goals transform from abstract ideas into meaningful commitments. You become more aware of the habits, beliefs, and behaviors that support your growth, as well as those that hold you back. This awareness doesn't just help you create a better plan, it helps you make better choices in the small, everyday moments that shape your progress. Clarity becomes the filter through which you evaluate your decisions, ensuring that each step moves you closer to your purpose. In many ways, clarity acts as an internal compass. Even when the future feels uncertain, your sense of purpose keeps you aligned. You may not know every detail of the journey ahead, but you understand the direction you're meant to move toward. This allows you to navigate uncertainty with confidence rather than hesitation. It reduces the overwhelm that comes from trying to control everything and replaces it with trust in the intentional path you've chosen to follow. Clarity also brings a deeper sense of fulfillment to your work. When your actions are connected to your purpose, even routine tasks feel more significant. You begin to appreciate the progress you're making, not just because you are getting closer to your goal, but because each step reflects the person you are becoming. This sense of alignment fuels motivation in a way external rewards never can. It creates a lasting drive that stays with you even when visible progress is slow. As your clarity strengthens, you start to recognize how much energy you once spent on distractions. You notice the habits, commitments, and patterns that drained you without contributing to your growth. With a clearer sense of purpose, you feel more empowered to let go of what no longer serves you. This isn't about abandoning responsibilities. It's about choosing to invest your time into actions that align with your vision, rather than diluting your focus with things that do not. Clarity also empowers you to set boundaries that protect your growth. You become more selective about the opportunities you accept, the people you surround yourself with, and the environments you allow yourself to stay in. You start to value your time differently because you understand that every moment spent on something misaligned is a moment taken away from what truly matters. This shift in mindset creates space for deeper focus, stronger progress, and more meaningful experiences. Another unexpected gift of clarity is confidence. When you know your purpose, you stop second guessing yourself as frequently. You trust your decisions because they come from a place of intention rather than impulse. You trust your path because it aligns with your values. You trust your potential because your actions consistently reinforce the direction you've chosen. This confidence isn't loud or boastful. It is steady, grounded, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. Ultimately, clarity becomes the foundation upon which meaningful transformation is built. It shapes your goals, strengthens your discipline, and heightens your sense of purpose. It ensures that your efforts are not scattered, but focused, not reactive, but deliberate. With clarity, every step becomes more purposeful, every challenge becomes more manageable, and every day becomes an opportunity to move closer to the life you're intentionally creating. Consistency often begins in the smallest, quietest moments, the ones no one sees and no one celebrates. It's the decision to show up even when you don't feel inspired, even when motivation is low, even when progress seems slow or invisible. These moments define the difference between wishful thinking and actual growth. Consistency doesn't demand perfection. It only asks that you keep moving, one deliberate action at a time, even when the results have not yet revealed themselves. When you commit to consistent action, you begin to build a rhythm that eventually becomes a part of your identity. What starts as effort slowly becomes habit, and what begins as a conscious choice gradually shifts into something you do naturally. This transition is powerful because it frees you from relying on willpower alone. Instead of convincing yourself to take action each day, you start to operate from a place of alignment where your habits support your goals without constant internal negotiation. Consistency also teaches you patience. In a world that glorifies instant results, the discipline to pursue long-term growth becomes rare and incredibly valuable. Every day you show up, you strengthen your ability to delay gratification. You learn to trust the process, understanding that progress often grows beneath the surface before it ever becomes visible. You begin to appreciate the journey instead of obsessing over the finish line. And this shift in mindset makes your path more sustainable. With consistent effort comes gradual but undeniable improvement. Even when changes feel small, they accumulate over time in ways that compound into significant transformation. A single workout doesn't change your body, but daily movement reshapes your strength and confidence. One day of focused work doesn't transform your career, but consistent dedication builds a foundation that opportunities grow from. One moment of courage doesn't redefine your identity, but repeatedly choosing to push through fear ultimately rewrites your story. Consistency also creates momentum, the kind that becomes a force of its own. Once you've built enough forward motion, continuing becomes easier than stopping. This momentum doesn't just carry you through the good days, it supports you through the difficult ones. It reminds you of the progress you've already made and helps you stay anchored in your commitment when distractions or setbacks appear. Momentum becomes a source of confidence, reinforcing the belief that you are capable of achieving the goals you're pursuing. As you continue showing up day after day, consistency begins to strengthen your relationship with yourself. Each action reinforces the message that you are someone who keeps your promises, someone who follows through, someone who is capable of discipline and determination. This self-trust becomes one of the most valuable assets you can develop. It allows you to take on bigger goals, embrace greater challenges, and believe in your ability to overcome obstacles without doubting your capacity to persist. Consistency also creates clarity over time. The more you practice, the more you learn about your strengths, your weaknesses, your preferences, and your potential. You begin to understand what works and what doesn't, allowing you to refine your approach with greater precision. This ongoing feedback loop helps you grow smarter, not just harder. With each repetition, you gain insight that shapes your future decisions, making your path more intentional and effective. The beauty of consistency is that it doesn't rely on extraordinary talent or special circumstances. It is accessible to anyone willing to commit. You don't need to be the fastest, the strongest, or the most skilled. You only need to be willing to take the next step. Consistency levels the playing field by rewarding persistence over perfection. It ensures that progress isn't reserved for the few. It's available to anyone willing to show up repeatedly. Through consistency, you also learn the value of discipline over motivation. Motivation is fleeting. It rises and falls with your mood, your environment, and your circumstances. Discipline, however, is steady. Discipline keeps you grounded in your commitments even when the initial excitement fades. When you rely on motivation alone, your progress becomes unpredictable. But when discipline takes the lead, your progress becomes inevitable. In the end, consistency becomes the quiet force that shapes your success from the inside out. It molds your habits, strengthens your identity, and transforms your ambitions into achievements through the power of accumulated effort. It is the engine behind every meaningful accomplishment, the difference between temporary effort and lasting change, and the habit that makes all other habits possible. Courage begins with acknowledging the fears you've spent years trying to avoid. It's the moment you realize that fear is not a signal to retreat, but an invitation to rise. Every person who has ever created meaningful change has felt fear, doubt, and uncertainty. The difference is that they chose to move forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it. It is the willingness to face discomfort because you know that staying where you are costs more than stepping into the unknown. As you step into courage, you start to recognize the subtle ways fear has influenced your decisions, how it kept you silent when you wanted to speak, how it held you back when you knew you were ready, how it convinced you to shrink when life was asking you to expand. This awareness is powerful. It shines a light on the invisible limits you've accepted as truth. Once you see them clearly, you can no longer pretend they don't exist. You begin to question them, challenge them, and push against them until they loosen their hold on you. Courage also demands honesty with yourself. It asks you to look at the habits, relationships, and patterns you've clung to simply because they were familiar. Familiar does not always mean healthy, and comfort does not always mean alignment. Courage is what allows you to say, "This is no longer for me," even when walking away feels risky. It's what allows you to choose growth over certainty and purpose over predictability. Every time you choose honesty over avoidance, you strengthen your inner resilience. There's a unique kind of freedom that comes with choosing courage. The moment you stop letting fear dictate your decisions, you reclaim control over your life. You begin to think more boldly, dream more freely, and act with a sense of ownership you didn't have before. This freedom doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes the way you face them. Instead of approaching obstacles with hesitation, you approach them with curiosity. Instead of seeing them as threats, you see them as stepping stones. Courage also reshapes your relationship with failure. When you are guided by fear, failure feels final. It feels like a confirmation of your doubts. But when you act with courage, failure becomes feedback. It becomes information that helps you grow, adapt, and improve. You understand that failure is not a reflection of your worth, but a necessary part of progress. Every courageous step you take builds your willingness to learn, try again, and trust yourself more deeply. As courage grows within you, you begin to take actions you once considered impossible. You speak up in moments when your voice matters. You pursue opportunities you once dismissed as not for someone like you. You set boundaries that protect your growth. You say yes to experiences that stretch you and no to obligations that drain you. Courage expands the possibilities you see for yourself, and with each courageous decision, your belief in your potential strengthens. Courage also influences the way you show up in the world. When you act with bravery, you naturally inspire others to do the same. People around you begin to feel permission to take risks, pursue their own growth, and challenge the limitations they've accepted. Your courage becomes a ripple effect, creating impact in ways you may never fully see. This influence doesn't come from force or pressure. It comes from authenticity. When you live bravely, you give others an example of what is possible. Even small acts of courage accumulate over time. A single moment of bravery may seem insignificant, but when repeated day after day, it gradually transforms your character. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who avoids challenges, but as someone who faces life head-on. This shift in identity becomes one of your greatest sources of strength. It builds a sense of inner certainty that stays with you even when external circumstances feel unstable. Courage also helps you welcome change rather than resist it. You start to understand that change is not something to fear, but something to work with. It becomes part of your evolution, rather than a disruption to your comfort. You stop clinging to old versions of yourself and begin to embrace who you are becoming. This openness makes you more adaptable, more resilient, and more willing to pursue opportunities that align with your future rather than your past. As courage takes root, you develop the confidence to fully step into your potential. You stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop waiting for guarantees. Instead, you move forward with the understanding that courage is the path to growth, that discomfort is part of transformation, and that your willingness to act despite uncertainty is what ultimately shapes your destiny. A 6-month plan built with intention begins with stepping back and evaluating your life through a clear and honest lens. It requires you to examine where you currently stand, not as a way to criticize yourself, but as a way to understand what needs to shift. When you create a plan without this awareness, you risk building on top of old patterns that no longer serve you. But when you take the time to reflect, you're able to design a path that aligns with your values, your goals, and the person you're striving to become. This foundation is what allows your plan to be rooted not in pressure, but in purpose. As you begin mapping out the next 6 months, you look beyond vague desires and start defining what you truly want to achieve. Ambition alone isn't enough. Clarity gives your plan direction. You identify the goals that matter most, goals that will elevate your life, challenge your limits, and move you forward in meaningful ways. Not every goal belongs in this season, and part of designing your plan is choosing what to prioritize and what to release. Intentionality means being selective, choosing quality over quantity, and pursuing what aligns with your greater vision. Once your goals are defined, you start breaking them into smaller, actionable steps. Big dreams often feel overwhelming when viewed as a whole, but when you divide them into monthly, weekly, and daily actions, they become achievable. These small steps create a roadmap that reduces uncertainty and builds confidence. You no longer feel like you're guessing your way forward. You know exactly what needs to happen and when. This structure doesn't restrict you. It empowers you by giving you a clear, manageable path to follow. Intention also requires understanding your personal rhythm, your energy, your habits, your tendencies. Designing a plan that ignores your natural patterns sets you up for inconsistency, but designing one that works with your strengths ensures sustainability. You begin to recognize the times of day when you're most productive, the environments that help you focus, and the routines that support your motivation. This self-awareness transforms your plan from something forced into something fluid, something that works with you rather than against you. An intentional 6-month plan also includes routines that strengthen your commitment. These routines act as anchors, daily rituals that reinforce your discipline and keep you aligned with your goal. Whether it's a morning routine that sets your mindset, a journaling practice that tracks your progress, or scheduled blocks of time dedicated to your priorities, these habits create structure. Routines remove the guesswork from each day and help you stay consistent even when motivation fluctuates. Designing your plan with intention means preparing for setbacks rather than ignoring them. Life doesn't pause just because you've set goals, and unexpected challenges will arise. Instead of hoping for smooth weeks and uninterrupted progress, you build flexibility into your plan. You create strategies for staying on track during busy seasons, adjusting deadlines when necessary, and giving yourself grace without abandoning your commitments. This resilience makes your plan adaptable rather than fragile. You also recognize the importance of systems, practical setups that support your success. Systems can be as simple as organizing your workspace, planning your meals, automating reminders, or using tools that track your habits and goals. These systems reduce decision fatigue and free up mental energy, allowing you to focus on what matters most. When systems are in place, your plan becomes easier to follow because the environment around you supports your efforts. Another essential part of designing your 6-month plan is accountability. This doesn't always mean relying on another person, although support from others can be valuable. Accountability can also come from tracking your progress, reviewing your goals weekly, or setting benchmarks that measure your growth. When you hold yourself accountable with intention, you create a sense of responsibility that strengthens your follow-through and deepens your commitment. As you refine your plan, you give yourself space to grow into it. You understand that transformation is not instant and that the first month may feel different from the third or the fifth. You allow the plan to evolve as you evolve. What once seemed like a stretch may become a new standard, and new opportunities may emerge along the way. An intentional plan is not rigid. It adapts with your growth, your insights, and your changing needs. By the time your 6-month plan is complete, it isn't just a list of goals or tasks. It becomes a blueprint for the person you're becoming, a clear, intentional design for the next chapter of your life. It reflects your values, your vision, and your willingness to take deliberate steps toward your future. It becomes a commitment to yourself, crafted with purpose, grounded in clarity, and built to guide you toward meaningful and lasting transformation. Commitment begins with a choice, a deliberate decision to stop negotiating with yourself and start taking responsibility for your own growth. It is not a fleeting promise made in a moment of inspiration, but a sustained decision to show up consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable. True commitment requires an understanding that your future self is shaped not by intentions alone, but by actions taken every day. It is in these repeated actions that transformation takes root, turning abstract goals into tangible results. When you commit fully, you accept that progress is not always linear. There will be days when momentum feels slow, when motivation wanes, and when obstacles appear insurmountable. Commitment is what carries you through those moments, reminding you that temporary setbacks are part of the journey, not the end of it. It teaches you resilience, discipline, and the courage to persevere when the easier path would be to quit or compromise. Commitment also requires accountability, both to yourself and, in some cases, to others. When you declare a goal and commit to it, you create a sense of responsibility that motivates action. This accountability can come from tracking your progress, sharing your intentions with a trusted mentor or friend, or establishing systems that measure your daily efforts. The awareness that you are responsible for your own results amplifies focus and energy, ensuring that your commitment is not just symbolic but practical. As you deepen your commitment, you begin to notice a shift in how you approach challenges. Obstacles are no longer signals to stop. They become invitations to adapt, learn, and grow stronger. Each challenge faced with dedication becomes a proof point that your commitment is real. This repeated testing of your resolve strengthens confidence, reinforces your sense of purpose, and builds the internal fortitude required to tackle even larger goals. Commitment also reshapes your habits and routines. When you are truly committed to a goal, your daily actions begin to align with your intentions automatically. You become more disciplined about time management, more selective about how you spend your energy, and more intentional in creating environments that support your growth. Habits that once felt difficult or unnecessary now feel essential because they serve a purpose greater than immediate comfort or convenience. This level of commitment creates clarity in decision making. When your focus is unwavering, distractions and temptations lose their power. You begin to evaluate choices through the lens of your goals, asking whether each action serves your larger vision or detracts from it. This intentionality reduces wasted effort, strengthens your resolve, and ensures that the energy you invest is directed toward meaningful outcomes rather than scattered pursuits. Commitment also nurtures patience. It teaches you to trust the process and honor the time required for transformation. Immediate results are rare, but consistent action, compounded over weeks and months, produces profound change. Patience, supported by unwavering commitment, allows you to remain steady and focused, even when results are not yet visible. It transforms waiting into active preparation rather than passive frustration. Another key aspect of commitment is self-trust. Each time you follow through on a promise to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of achieving what you set out to do. This trust becomes a foundation for more ambitious goals, greater risks, and a willingness to push beyond comfort zones. The more you honor your commitments, the more you develop confidence in your ability to navigate uncertainty and embrace growth. Commitment also encourages consistency. When you are devoted to a goal, showing up becomes non-negotiable. You develop a rhythm that sustains your efforts and ensures progress even when motivation fades. This consistency compounds over time, turning small, repeated actions into significant results. Commitment transforms action from a temporary effort into a lifestyle, shaping the person you are becoming as much as the outcomes you achieve. Ultimately, commitment fuels momentum. Each decision to follow through, each day spent honoring your intentions, builds energy that propels you forward. The act of staying committed strengthens your resilience, sharpens your focus, and expands your capacity to achieve. It becomes the force that turns plans into reality, aspirations into accomplishments, and potential into tangible transformation.